Hi, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do the fifth and last part of Basis of Yoga, and this chapter deals with physical consciousness, as it is called in this book. I prepared 3 excerpts. I must say I read those a couple days ago, so I'm gonna have to remind myself what I was going to say about them. Well, let's just go with the flow. So, first excerpt. Our object is the supramental realization, and we have to do whatever is necessary for that or towards that under the conditions of each stage. At present, the necessity is to prepare the physical consciousness. For that, a complete equality and peace and a complete dedication, free from personal demand or desire in the physical and the lower vital parts, are the things to be established. Other things can come in their proper time. What is needed now is the psychic opening in the physical consciousness and the constant presence and guidance there. So, I think what he means is he refers to wanting to get in touch with the what he calls supramental. And I mean, this is a really short excerpt, but there's tons of materials in these couple of sentences, and I'm going to try and almost read it intuitively, if you will. What we normally associate with consciousness is a type of awareness that is coupled with the mental, the mind. And I think what he lays out is that we are not aiming for mind stuff, but we are aiming to transcend mind stuff. You can almost picture the term enlightenment to be the way we think about it, or the way we can conceive of enlightenment, to be a mental construct in itself. So you want to be able to transcend that. So it's almost like when you're on the journey, you develop, at some point in your journey, you will develop a fixed idea of what enlightenment is to you, you know. You will do a lot of projection onto that fixed idea, much like when you probably, much like any person who follows any type of theistic religion in which there is one God, you know, people tend to project just a lot of things onto that idea of this God that they move towards, when really what they should be doing is to let go of any concepts of what this God is, because the journey to enlightenment isn't a linear one, and it's detrimental almost if you construct this determined sort of goal for yourself, and you make yourself want to reach that goal, you see. So you kind of set yourself up for failure almost, you know, by doing that. Because all you do is you're chasing a sort of a mental construct that doesn't have a life of its own. It just lives from your projecting into it. I feel that anything I'm saying in today's video could be completely misunderstood, so I'm gonna ask you to try and listen with your heart rather than with your head this time, because that's really what this is about. This paragraph is about, is transcend what we regularly understand to be the mind, and the type of almost working consciousness that we use just to get around in life, you know, the goal-orientated, linear, sort of beta brainwave-like consciousness. And he stresses that what is most important at a certain point in time in that journey is to develop dedication that is free from personal demand or desire. And that's exactly what I was trying to get across, is that devotion shouldn't be directed to a point that is extrapolated way somewhere into the future, and that is sort of just a mental construct, you know, because if you do that, you project your life force onto an empty shell pretty much, and that would be a shame. Rather, you want to reach a understanding that, or I shouldn't say understanding because that too is mental. You should reach a felt sense. That's a good thing. That's a good term. You should reach a felt sense of devotion, you know, because you are it's about experiencing. It's about experiencing fully in the now what you tended to project into the future before, you know. And when you manage to stay in the now and have a felt sense of devotion, it's there, and then that there can be unfoldment, you know. There can, if trying to think of a metaphor comes in, so imagine, picture a flower, you know, the bud of a flower. So the flower, which is still closed, and it has this fixed idea about where the sun is and what the sun is supposed to be, and how the sun is supposed to, what the sun is supposed to feel like. And all this time it sort of projects this idea of it projects its idea of the sun into sort of like a distant future, and it fails to realize that it is engulfed in that kind of light already. So it stays closed, you see. So whereas if it manages to take back the projection and just remain completely in the now, it will almost naturally open up, because it realizes that it is already engulfed in that type of sunlight that it always hoped to reach, you know. So I'm not sure if that makes any sense. And he mentions, in the end, he says, what is needed now is the psychic opening in the physical consciousness and the constant presence and guidance there. And maybe the image of the flower wasn't so bad after all, because, you know, when you open yourself up to that kind of felt sense of the sun in the now, that is where your nourishment comes from. That is where true understanding comes from. It sort of emanates from there, and it enters you, and it starts to inform you. So you form a connection, you open yourself up to a connection, and you open yourself up to receiving. And there's a lot of I would call them instruments, you know. It's almost like what you open yourself up to, what it can feel like in this worldly, bodily existence is your intuition. You open yourself up to your own intuition, it feels like. And the intuition is something that is felt. It's not something mental, you know. I mean, it's not a mental construct, but it's something that is felt. You are able to take it in both with you're able to take it in with all your senses, pretty much. And he says that it is that type of constant presence that you want to establish, you know. It's that kind of constant connection, you know, to source that you want to establish, so that guidance originates from there and not from the mental consciousness, if that makes any sense. Second excerpt. These variations in the consciousness during the day are a thing that is common to almost everybody in the sadhana. And again, let's remind ourselves, sadhana equals training. I mean, being on the path, you know, learning and all that. The principle of oscillation, relaxation, relapse to a normal or a past lower condition from a higher state that is experienced but not yet perfectly stable becomes very strong and marked when the working of the sadhana is in the physical consciousness. For there is an inertia in the physical nature that does not easily allow to does not easily allow the intensity natural to the higher consciousness to remain constant. The physical is always thinking back to something more ordinary. The higher consciousness and its force have to work long and come again and again before they can become constant and normal in the physical nature. Do not be disturbed or discouraged by these variations or this delay, however long and tedious. Remain careful only to be quiet, always with an inner quietude and as open as possible to the higher power, not allowing any really adverse condition to get hold of you. If there is no adverse wave, then the rest is only a persistence of imperfections which all have in abundance. That in perfection and persistence the force must work out and eliminate, but for the elimination time is needed. So, to belabor the flower analogy once more, your feeling will be that the sun keeps setting. You will feel that the sun was there just a moment ago. I felt it, I was able to feel it, but now it's setting again and it's gone, and now it's dark again, and all these, you know, disturbing thoughts, maybe your tendencies, but I don't know, can be anything, you know, anything that holds you back really from realizing your true potential come back and sort of cloud your existence, you know. And he says that's normal. So it takes time for that kind of consciousness, even once that connection was established, to remain constant and to remain open. And when we talk about time, I don't think there's a general recipe. It's not like you can open a course book on enlightenment and say stage number 1 takes this amount of time, stage number 2 that amount of time, and once you reach this level you come. So we have to sort of move away from these, I think, linear and very sort of ego-inspired types of measurement, you know. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm a completely, I think you call that cerebral person. I mean, if I would call myself rather cerebral, so I'm in my head a lot, so I'm not the, I don't know, I'm hardly physical, I guess, so, but it's not, it's not about that type of felt sense that I'm talking about. Felt sense doesn't have to necessarily be equals to bodily sensation, you know. If you're someone who is able to have a felt sense in their, more like in the upper part of their energy system, then that is as good as if you're someone who's able to, or usually feels things or senses things in the lower, more in the lower part of their energy system. So you shouldn't be discouraged when there is talk of felt sense, to have a felt sense. We could replace felt sense with experience also, you know, to really experience something rather than just conceiving of something, thinking about something. So, I mean, obviously, he advises you to not set yourself up for failure. So, if you know of a couple of things that pull you down or that kind of bring you out of alignment, out of your balance, then obviously try not to engage in them anymore, or try to reduce your engagement, you know. I wouldn't think of, but what I like about this paragraph is that he almost promises that it's a wave-like happening. So even though you might feel at times that the sun is gone and I can't see it anymore, and it's probably not there anymore, and it's never gonna come back, and you're maybe awash with your inner demons or your addictions or whatever, you know, whatever the case might be. Just know that there's always going to be movements where this feeling of supra consciousness or your feeling of connection will come back as well, again, to you, without your really doing anything more than just try to be present in the now. And in a way, we talked about brain states in one of the earlier videos, and if you ever, I can give you a good example of, with regards to things coming back to you and taking time and coming in waves, you know. If you've ever tried to push something away, usually you try to push something away after you've attached yourself to it. So the first movement is you attach yourself to something, and then you're and then you might get frustrated with your attachment, so you try to push it away actively, you know, say, oh, I don't want to think about this anymore, go away. You might manage throughout the day, because you might manage to distract yourself throughout the day with whatever, work, you know, because you're in beta brain state. But when you lie down at night and you try to fall asleep, and your brain goes into a more relaxed brain state, usually those feelings that we try to push away tend to come back. So there's a correlation with certain states of consciousness and certain brain waves, in my opinion. I'm going to read you a third excerpt. Actually, I'm going to read you part of a third excerpt because it's rather long, and it deals with, he doesn't really like psychoanalysis, so someone must have asked him, one of his students must have asked him about the significance of psychoanalysis and therapy and all that kind of stuff, and he's not very much in favor of that. So he tries to put it in perspective and give some information about it. So the superconscient, not the subconscient, is the true foundation of things. The significance of the lotus is not to be found by analyzing the secrets of the mud from which it grows here. Its secret is to be found in the heavenly archetype of the lotus that blooms forever in the light above. The self-chosen field of the psychologist is besides poor, dark and limited. You must know the whole before you can know the part, and the highest before you can truly understand the lowest. That is the promise of the greater psychology awaiting its hour, before which these poor groupings will disappear and come to nothing. So even a field like psychology, I mean, he doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say psychology is for shits, you know. He says if it's informed by the right type of understanding, it can be helpful. But what psychoanalysis tends to do is to focus on the wrong things and approach problems with a completely wrong understanding, actually a materialistic understanding, you know, matter being first and anything mental and spiritual being second, while it's clearly the other way around. I mean, according to him and his belief, and actually mine. So, yeah, my battery's gonna die any second now, so I hope this was helpful, and we concluded this little treasure trove now, and let's see what comes next, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.